Okay. Howdy, folks. I am the Great Clement. I am currently 34 years old and have been doing this YouTube thing since 2007. The first video of mine was about Final Fantasy X, a game from a series that I covered in great detail. In that retrospective, I let you peek behind the curtain a little, explaining how exactly I stumbled onto those games, and what it was like to grow up with it. And yet, that only scratched the surface. People know I love Sonic, people know I love Mega Man, but these are just tiny pieces of the puzzle that I've been forming for over 30 years. And hoo boy, things have changed a lot since the 90s. When I was a kid, I didn't have the luxury to download a free-to-play game like Fall Guys. I didn't have this network of content creators to tell me which games were worth playing. Me and my friends constantly played split-screen multiplayer that ran at 10 frames a second, and we enjoyed it, damn it! I have a very long history with this stuff, and it's something I've always been interested in talking about. So on Patreon, I made this list of video ideas that my supporters could vote for after Galgun. And surprisingly, they didn't want me to talk about Star Fox, they didn't want me to do another JRPG deep dive. Instead, over 52% wanted to know my life story. They wanted to know why I'm still talking about all this, what made me the person that I am. They wanted to know how I got into gaming. In preparation for this video, I actually searched through my parents' house to find old toys, old magazines, photographs, and videos from a bygone time. I had a very nostalgic month remembering things that I hadn't thought about in over 15 years. And since I'm an old fogey who's bound to lose his memories one day, I can't think of a better time to reminisce about my past. To show you all how embarrassing I used to be. To show the newer generation just how different gaming in the 90s was. So, without further ado, let me tell you how we got here. How and why I got into gaming. So I was born on April 11th, 1988, the only child to a mother who raised me by herself, a Canadian who lived in a small forest town in northern Ontario. My home is surrounded by trees, and our shopping mall has never exactly been good? It did the job. My mom still bought me all kinds of colorful sweaters and whatever, but we never had access to the wide variety of things that a city would have. Like, my town had arcade machines, but we never had an actual arcade, you know? I remember we had lots of rental stores for gaming, but no actual place to buy them. Even as far as the late 90s, we would have to drive an hour out of town just to find a proper Zellers or Walmart or electronic boutique. I don't remember seeing video games in local bargain bins until the early 2000s with Giant Tiger. So either my town sold video game consoles somewhere I didn't know about, or my family was very up on the take and got them out of town. I'm not sure. But what I do know is that I owe my first exposure to video games to my aunts and uncles. My mom would always take me to visit them, and one day they had a Nintendo Entertainment System. And the first video game I ever played was Super Mario Bros. 3. That game came out in February of 1990, but I would have had to have played it in 1991, just before my 4th birthday in 1992. So I was 3 years old. And instantly, I am completely drawn in. I was just a baby, and what I understood about television was that it operated on its own. The Care Bears will never actually talk to me. I can't force Barney the dinosaur to stop moving. But Mario was different. If I'm not touching the controller, then he just stands there. If I push A, he'll jump. If I push right on the D-pad, he'll start walking. If I push left, he'll go back the way he came. I am in control! This television show is operating under my whims! I was blown away. This is amazing, I thought. But of course, the show isn't very entertaining if all you're doing is looking at a single screen. And when you're a dumb kid, that's the most action you're ever gonna see. Wait, Mario died? What happened? The tiny orange guy is bad! Oh no! When you're little, it never occurs to you that maybe I should jump over him. Or jump on him. But luckily my mom was there, and because she was an adult, she picked up on it easily. And I was just vibing watching her play it. She'd hold me between her arms while she ran through the Koopas and piranha plants and picked up the Starman. And I was just glued to the TV screen in a way that no cartoon could ever grab me. I was fascinated by the concept of having control, and yet it was a game. The whole point was to get Mario to the end of the screen, but they wouldn't let you do it easily. There are enemies and hazards, and you gotta figure out how to overcome all of it. The more times we'd visit my family, I'd keep asking if I could play Mario 3 again, and I would get better and better the more I played. Unless we changed to one of the more frustrating games that I could never wrap my head around. Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was a bit much. Who framed Roger Rabbit? Well, I'll never know because I don't even know what I'm supposed to do! But then we'd play Mario 1, and everything was good again. Bless you, Nintendo. So at 3 years old, I was so enthusiastic about Nintendo, I'd bug my mom about when we'd go back to play it again. Cut to April 11th, 1992. It's my 4th birthday, all these kids are there, and I got a Garfield gumball machine. I also got a plushie of Fievel from An American Tail, Fievel Goes West. But the main attraction, the big present that I exploded in joy over, was the Super Nintendo. My mom didn't just get me an NES, oh no! She got the new tech. She got the far superior console, which came with Super Mario World. And I guess because she thought I liked Castlevania 2, she also got me Super Castlevania 4. Those are the first 2 video games I ever owned, and I still love the both of them to this day. And by the way, this is it! This is my original Super Nintendo. I never sold it, it never broke down, it's been intact since 1992. And it's got a lot of stickers on it, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I mean, it was easy to fall in love with video games thanks to Super Mario World. Unlike Mario 3, this game had a save feature. If I made it to World 3, I didn't have to leave the console on just to keep my progress. I could turn it off, go to kindergarten, and when I came home, I was right back where I left off. Yeah, the point of every level was to reach the end gate, but there was so much more to it. Hidden pathways, special abilities, warp stars that could help me beat the game in less than 30 minutes. I only briefly played Mario 3, but with Mario World I had months to see everything it had to offer. Time to improve my coordination, time to master the game's difficulty, time to discover every little secret that it had. And after like 5 or 6 months, I was finally able to do what I always wanted to do. Save Princess Toadstool. I made it to Bowser, I figured out how to beat him, and I completed my first ever video game. And that was incredible! It was the first time I ever felt such a significant sense of accomplishment. Long before passing grade 1, long before making new friends. I was screaming to my mom, I did it! I did it! I beat King Koopa! And even then, that was far from the end. Because then I had to beat it again. Beat it faster. Beat it without getting a game over. Which is to say nothing of my struggle with Castlevania 4. A much harder experience than Mario, I still wanted to replicate that euphoria by beating this game too. And woof! The torture dungeon, the friggin' tower with the spiky wheel, Slagra. This game took me so long to beat, it was crazy. And yet, I did it. I must have died a million times, but I still pulled it off. I beat Dracula and destroyed the Creature of Chaos. And again, I felt so powerful. I felt so proud of myself for managing to do it. It was intoxicating, but of course, now I had beaten my entire library. I wanted another challenge to overcome. And this is how it starts. When you're a young kid in the 90s, you don't have internet. You don't have Wikipedia pages to find every game that's ever existed. Anything I discovered felt like pure chance. We never had an arcade, but thank God all of these businesses ordered arcade machines. My mom would take me to the bowling alley, and there's a machine of Miss Pac-Man. She'd take me to this one restaurant, and there was Root Beer Tapper. I remember going to a pizza place and bugging my mom for quarters because I really wanted to play Street Fighter 2. And then at some point I saw a machine for Outrun, and man, what variety! Not every game was Mario. There's fighting games and racing games and games where you get people drunk as a bartender. And I was just that eager kid who was all, I want to play it! I want to play it! Much to the frustration of my family, I'm sure. Because again, lucky me, 3 sets of my cousins got video game consoles and I always wanted to play them. Yeah, I gotta say up front that my family's pretty big. While I was a lone child, my mom was one of 5 daughters. My grandmother had 5 kids, and all of those kids had kids of their own. I have like 10 cousins. And man, how fortuitous that every single household gave video games a chance. 2 of my cousins had the Sega Genesis, and another cousin had Bonk's Adventure for the TurboGrafx 16. A console I would never have heard of if not for that. Like seriously, it wasn't until the early 2000s that I'd become familiar with the consoles that came before. I never heard of the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision or the Commodore 64. Those were all before my time. It wouldn't be until re-releases like Intellivision Lives on PS2 that I'd even touch these libraries. I'd see older consoles in gaming stores as an adult, but as of 2023, I still have never actually played the second generation on physical hardware. Although going by the video game crash of 1983, I don't think I'm missing all that much. But either way, I loved playing the Sega Genesis. My cousins had such a unique library. The Terminator, Streets of Rage, Quackshot, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, hello! Come on, that's amazing! But the big draw for me was Sonic the Hedgehog 2. As much as I loved Mario, I couldn't deny this was the best video game by far. Everything about it is just peak video game to me. The incredible graphics, the bouncy music, and of course, the challenge. See, Sonic 2 was kind of insidious, where at first it seems simple. Unlike Mario, who usually died in 2 or 3 hits, Sonic was allowed as many as possible as long as you picked up a single ring. When you're a kid, that's great, because you could hang in there much longer and see as much of the game as possible. But every now and then, something would throw you off. I can't tell you how many times my friends and family would die in Chemical Plant Act 2 because of the rising water. The annoying jerks of Metropolis Zone, the bottomless pits of Wing Fortress. And then you get to the final boss, and it's so much worse than Bowser because the stage has no rings, and thus you have to do it without taking any damage. I died and died and died so many times. And every time you got a game over, you got kicked all the way back to the beginning. But still, the more you played, the more you would discover hidden one-up boxes. The more you realized how important it was to get a high score. Because getting over 10,000 points would net you a continue, giving you many more chances at Robotnik. When I finally figured out how to handle the Death Egg robot for the first time, no exaggeration, one of the happiest moments of my life. Just incredible. Mario World and Sonic 2 were so equivalent for me that I could never engage in console war arguments. I'd go to school and tell kids I had a Super Nintendo, and some of them were just like, whatever, Sega Genesis is so much better than Nintendo. Sonic sucks, Mario sucks, I didn't care. I loved both. So I always had an open mind whenever they debut something new like a PlayStation or an Xbox. Let me play a game from Capcom. Let me play a game from Konami. I don't care where it comes from. I'm too in love with video games to reject it. Which takes me to the games I owned. Back in 92-93, I didn't see too many video game commercials. Being 5 or 6 years old, I could never venture out into town by myself. So I had no idea what games were even out there. So my mom just had to guess. Every Christmas, every birthday, she would surprise me with something new. But obviously, she's not a gamer. She's not in touch with what's considered best, so she'd just get random shit that was really cheap. I had no idea what The Legend of the Mystical Ninja was, but thank God she got it anyway. I love that game. Other times she'd get stuff like Cool World. Cool World, if you're unfamiliar, is a movie tie-in game. It's a movie about a cartoon lady named Holly Wood, played by Kim Basinger. And She drags her cartoonist into the cartoon world in order to have sex with him and become a real woman. Oh yeah, that is an adult movie that just so happened to have a tie-in video game for the Super Nintendo. What a world we live in. But still, she did strike gold on occasion, which came in the form of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And to this day, it is still her favorite game of all time. Again, she's not a gamer. She doesn't own a console, she doesn't play every day, but whenever we talk about old games, this is the one she brings up. We spent so much time together playing it, and it's always fun to find that one game that breaks through the barrier, you know? That one thing I can share with someone and be like, come on, Mom, we gotta figure out how to get through Turtle Rock. Couldn't share Power Rangers with her, couldn't share Bubsy with her. Yes, I owned the original Bubsy, and I know it inside and out.
What could possibly go wrong?
And of course, when I got into grade 1, grade 2, I was meeting a whole bunch of new kids, and some of them had video games. So anytime I hung out with a friend, I'd discover even more titles like Road Rash or Donkey Kong Country. It's one thing to play Street Fighter 2 by yourself against a ridiculously hard computer, but playing Mortal Kombat with friends made you realize just how fun fighting games actually were. This is also how I learned about the Game Boy. Yeah, look at this solid white brick. You know, kids today, you got the Nintendo Switch, you got the Steam Deck, you got a Vita and 3DS. All of those have backlights. This did not have a backlight. I had to play it in like really uncomfortable positions, like under a lamp or outside, but I couldn't be in too bright a spot outside, otherwise I wouldn't be able to see what I was doing. Hey, this Game Boy I didn't have from the beginning. I didn't actually get my own Game Boy until 1998-99, when the Pokemon craze was happening. Now, the only handheld I had as a kid was a Tiger Electronics game, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. It was something else. I actually beat it. I didn't know you could beat one of these things, but I did beat it, and I was like, wow, I'll never play that again. By the way, the first Game Boy game I ever played? Mega Man 2. Yep, that was my introduction to the series. And it was super hard! I wanted to get better at it, but the problem was that I was visiting a friend. They want to play outside, they want to show off their toys, and being the obnoxious kid that I was just all, oh, give me another chance, I know I can beat Woodman! It wasn't until I was in junior high when I realized that this was pretty bad behavior. This is a trip down memory lane, but it's also a cautionary tale. Like, I was a good kid. I behaved well, I never got into trouble, I was shy and soft-spoken and had a wide variety of interests. If we're hanging out and you didn't have video games, we would have a normal day. But if I see a game I've never played before, oh, I'm gonna be bugging you to be like, hey, we should try out Earthworm Jim 2! I think it would be really fun if we played Earthworm Jim 2. Oh god, I remember my mom took me and my cousin to Niagara Falls so that we could go see Marineland.
There's a place I know in Ontario where the sea lions kiss, so the story goes. It's amazing shows and Friendship Cove. Everyone loves Marineland.
I was excited to see the whales and seals and dolphins. I had a great time seeing them splash around. But then we want to get food. We walk around the park and then all of a sudden, there's an arcade! What? This was never advertised in any of the commercials, so I had no idea that this was a thing. The air was sucked out of me. I mean, they had everything! Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, the TMNT games, the Simpsons game. I didn't even know there was a Simpsons game! It was also my first time seeing an FMV video game because they had Crime Patrol, a light gun game where you shoot at real actors with incredibly bad cuts.
Winners don't do drugs.
I'm not sure police are supposed to shoot the drugs. But I got tokens and played so many of those games to the point that I spent 40 minutes in there. My mom had to tell me twice, let's go, we're not spending all of our time here. I could only imagine what she was thinking, because it's like, hey, we've driven really far from home, we're seeing aquatic animals we never get to see up close, and all Clement wants to do is play video games. God. My priorities. But I just had this laser focus. It's like I'd watch cartoons and, oh hey, Beetlejuice, that's a fun show. Batman, oh yeah, so cool. But then I'd see Mario pop up on screen and I'd be all, whoa, wait a minute!
Hey, paisanos, it's the Super Mario Brothers Super Show!
It's like just the mere fact that Mario is a video game character put his cartoon on full priority. Of course I watched that, and Sonic the Hedgehog, and Mega Man, and Captain N, the Game Master. Oh, but watch out, McDonald's has a new Happy Meal!
If you think you're ready for life on the edge, if you think you can keep up with Sonic and his high-flying friend Tails, then maybe you're ready for McDonald's Sonic 3 Happy Meal.
Those toys were some of the only video game figures I could get in the early 90s. And I still have them! I still got the Goomba from the Mario set, and I still, of course, have Dr. Robotnik. His forehead's looking a little red, a little bruised, probably because he tumbled down the stairs one too many times. It's like I would see all kinds of kids' movies, Aladdin, Toy Story, etc. But when I saw the trailer for the Super Mario Brothers movie, I mean, of course I bugged my mother about it. We gotta see that! We gotta! And I did! And afterwards, all I remember thinking was, gosh, that was a weird movie. But there was one show in particular that I watched for almost a decade, and all the Canadians watching this probably know where I'm going. Video and Arcade Top 10. That theme song sounds so familiar now. What is that? Yeah, totally! They ripped off Mega Man 2! As I understand it, Americans watched a show called Nick Arcade. This was basically our version of that. It was a game show hosted by a guy named Nicholas Pickles, which may or may not have been his real name. 5 kids would compete against each other by playing whatever game was featured that week. Maybe they were playing a WCW game. Maybe Yoshi's Island, you never knew. It was a fairly pedestrian program because really, all they ever did was read the game's storyline, explain the controls, and maybe give a few tips and tricks. And then one of the kids won, and they just moved on to the next game. No cool cheats, no detailed walkthrough, it was just a bunch of 8-year-olds playing the first level of some random game. But again, keep in mind, this is the 90s. I can't just subscribe to Nintendo's YouTube channel. The only kind of exposure I had about upcoming games was in TV commercials. And I'll be honest, I saw a lot for the N64 and PlayStation, but I barely saw anything for the Super Nintendo. I only remember Mario All-Stars and the Yoshi's Island one where the dude friggin' explodes.
All served up with the latest graphic technology, Morphmation.
No more.
Sure you don't have room for another little bonus level?
Oh my god! So Video and Arcade Top 10 was must-see TV because you'd always discover something new. I didn't know there was a fighting game with Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. Justice League Task Force, eh? I'll be sure to bring this up with my mother, It's a good thing I had a Super Nintendo though, because this show was completely one-sided. Like, over the decade, it would upgrade from Super Nintendo games to Game Boy, from that to N64, eventually ending with the Game Boy Advance and GameCube, all of which are Nintendo products. So if you owned a Sega Genesis or PlayStation, well, tough shit. Now, how was Canada expected to expand its horizons? Well, don't worry, my mom had me covered there, because in 1995, she would buy a personal computer. Mom sets up her Windows 95 PC, and I didn't really know what to expect. I knew she wanted to use the internet and that it had a paint program, but beyond that, I figured it was just for work stuff. So imagine my surprise when she comes up to me with a CD in her hand, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, Clement, this has video games on it." Like a dog, my head perked up all, video games? Blah. And this is the CD in question, Games for Windows 95. I couldn't believe my mom still had this CD after all these years. Now, previously, I had experienced Commander Keen and the original Duke Nukem on my aunt's computer, so I was expecting the demo disc to feature things similar to that. But oh no, we were going deeper. The demo disc starts off with this naked purple man in outer space, and he's watching all of these spaceships firing at each other. One of them docks inside of a space station, which is actually the hub map of the demos. Like, you actually walk around this 3D environment with all of these tubular posters. Then, of course, you get to the demo room, and it's just a smorgasbord of things to play. Like Doom! My very first FPS, Doom, is a perfect video game. It still holds up incredibly well in 2023, something that everyone should experience once. But when you're 7 years old, it feels incredibly wrong to be playing it. I was familiar with Mortal Kombat and its various fatalities, but Doom was on a whole nother level. My character was blowing holes into people with a handgun, running away from scary demons. Not to mention, whenever you shot a volatile barrel, you turned people into hamburger. Amazingly, my mom was fine with me playing this. She was also fine with me playing my first ever point-and-click adventure game. What do you think of when you think of that genre? Monkey Island? Myst? Leisure Suit Larry? Well, none of those were my first. No, my first point-and-click game was Beavis and Butthead in Virtual Stupidity. This was one of the first games I ever played that was fully voice-acted. The Super Nintendo could only handle so much, which meant lots of reading. But with Beavis and Butthead, I could just sit back and listen to one of the funniest games I ever played.
When I finish my set, I'm gonna kick your ass.
I already finished my set this morning.
The only set you ever did was the one-handed stroke. On your wiener.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
There was Double Switch, an incredibly cheesy FMV game that played similarly to Night Trap. Is it a good game? No, but it featured real people that I could manipulate through gameplay. My 7-year-old brain blown away because apparently video games could also be movies. Some starring Tia Carrere from Wayne's World, some taking place in the Star Wars universe. With all the 3D flight sims and incredibly detailed platformers, this demo disc made it clear that gaming wasn't just for kids. There was a whole nother world that adults were experiencing. In the mid-90s even. Now, I'm not much of a PC gamer because I enjoy the convenience of console gaming. I don't need to keep updating my graphics card, I don't need to fiddle with all of the settings. I can just pop it in and it's exactly how it's supposed to be. But I did play a few things here and there, like The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon. But then, tragedy struck when my mom wanted to do something nice for me. And this is a true story. She downloaded a demo of Sonic CD. Because I loved Sonic too, and she thought that this would be fun for me. But after playing it, the computer just locks up. Like, I can't move the mouse, I can't do anything, so we force a restart. And it just wouldn't come back. I don't know what happened. Maybe the demo was secretly a virus, but either way, Sonic CD killed my Windows 95. Thanks, Sonic. Needless to say, when my mom eventually bought a new computer, I was hesitant to download game demos. Just as well, though, because we were about to enter a new generation of gaming. And man, let me just say, I was incredibly lucky. Not just because my family exposed me to all of this, but also because I was born in 1988. I started with the 8-bit NES, I upgraded to the 16-bit Super Nintendo, and then everything evolved so dramatically. The Nintendo 64 was mind-blowing. Mario in 3 dimensions. He can flip, he can lawn jump, he can bounce off walls, and now he's talking!
It's me, Mario!
Growing up, I'd be seeing a blocky approximation of Bowser, right? And then when the GameCube came out in 2001, it was light years ahead. Bowser in Luigi's Mansion was so detailed that he actually resembled his CG renders. And we weren't even in high definition yet. It was just so fun to see the technology grow alongside me, to see Grand Theft Auto 3 transition to Grand Theft Auto 4. I couldn't have asked for a better time to get into video games. Kids today are already starting with photorealism. They don't have to worry about their Pokemon being still images. If they want to find out about a new game, there's going to be tons of images and videos freely available to them on social media. But me? Oh, I had to go out of my way for that kind of information. I needed some Nintendo power. So in 1997, Star Wars came back to theaters in the form of their special editions, and I had never seen it before. My mom was adamant, oh, trust me, honey, you're gonna want to watch Star Wars. And she was absolutely right. I still vividly remember watching A New Hope for the first time, and seeing the Death Star trench run in a theater was the most amazing movie-going experience I ever had. I loved the trilogy. I loved Star Wars. So on April 11th, 1997, my mom buys me Star Wars Shadows of the Empire for the N64. And of course, I loved it. In fact, as a hyper 9-year-old, I was gushing about it a little too much. One day, my mom had a friend over, a guy we called Tommy Two Birds, who joined us when we saw the trilogy. I figured, well, he loves Star Wars, so I should read the instruction manual for Shadows of the Empire. They're trying to chat and I'm too busy reading stupid level descriptions. While hiding out in Mos Eisley, Dash overhears a discussion. Jabba the Hutt has hired a swoop gang to kill Skywalker. Yeah, I know, I was a very cringy kid. But it became clear that I was reading everything pretty well. I was a spelling bee champion from grades 2 to 4, and I attribute that purely to reading tons of dialogue from video games. So she thought, well, you know what Clement would appreciate? I should buy him a subscription from a gaming magazine. And that's how I got my first 5 issues of Nintendo Power. Look at that face! Look at that face that only a mother could love, good God. I had a bit of a buck teeth thing going on. I guess whatever subscription deal she signed up for, it let me have 5 magazines up front. The earliest covering Shadows of the Empire, go figure. And that issue in particular had a whole bunch of stickers that came with it. So, in case you were wondering, all of the stickers on my Super Nintendo came from that Nintendo Power magazine. You got Dash Rendar, you got Boba Fett, you got the whole gang, they're all here. And some Pokemon for good comfort. Years later, I would start watching YouTubers, specifically the Angry Video Game Nerd. And I remember being shocked during his Superman 64 video because it turns out that James Rolfe had the same magazine and the exact same idea. Great minds think alike, motherfucker. You guys love waiting for Nintendo Directs? Well, I got a Nintendo Direct every month. It was through these magazines that I would get an idea of what was coming next. There's gonna be a Zelda 64? Oh my god! For the first time ever, I became aware of the concept of cheat codes. Yeah, remember those? Thanks to Nintendo Power, I could play Shadows of the Empire in a completely new way. As a Wampa. Okay, you were incredibly slow and it wasn't all that exciting, but still! Wampa Stompa, baby. I loved in the May 1997 issue, fellow readers were asked to submit their best Super Mario 64 faces. See, I knew you could tug on his face at the beginning of the game, but I had no idea that you could keep the poses where they were by holding the R button down. So just from reading those 2 pages, I got even more gameplay out of it. It's also bittersweet going back to old magazines because I remember being obsessed with this one article about Wonder Project J2. It's this anime game where not only did the character design grab me, but I was also just intrigued from the screenshots. A game where you influence the behavior of this girl while trying to uncover some kind of mystery. It looked so different from every other game on the system, and I was eager to give it a shot. Alas, it remained in Japan and never came to the West. I'm sure Earthbound fans would have loved to have had that update with Earthbound 64. Actually, I'm sure they would have liked Mother 3 in general. But hey, it was just nice to have something to look forward to, previews of what gaming had in store. And I collected these all throughout high school. I got Nintendo Powers ranging from the N64 to the GameCube to the Wii. And that wasn't the only stuff I collected, you know? I had Game Fan, I had Expert Gamer, Tips and Tricks. I had to subscribe to Tips and Tricks. After all, if you don't subscribe, you will be killed. How's that for a tagline? Some of the ads in gaming magazines were so extra. I always loved Paper Mario's, where it's just Mario against a blank backdrop with a scissor outline. Why? Because it's a free demo. Brilliant! Point blank. It's more fun than shooting your neighbor's cat. What? Micro Machines V3. Haven't you always wanted to do it on the kitchen table? Excuse me? Anybody up for a threesome? But Susan, I have Klonoa. Hey baby, I want Klonoa. Protect your worm from the evil pussy. Crash Bandicoot, he's got to have them all. No arms, no legs, huge features. Did they just imply that Rayman has a massive dick? Yeah, something you should know about the 90s and early 2000s, it was horny as hell. So at first the magazines were my only window into the development process of video games. But as I got older, I kept stumbling upon special TV shows. I saw stuff like Game Nation, where contestants answered trivia from a bald guy in a referee shirt. And then YTV had a short-lived show called Gamers with a Z. Fellow Canadians will recognize the host of this show because it starred Canadian icon PJ Phil Guerrero.
Well, Joe, Siphon Filter 2 is a great game, although I found it a little bit violent when I played it, and I'm left thinking, will society become more violent as a result? When will the world realize that violence, even in a fantasy setting, is never healthy for the human mind? The new Mega Death game is in.
These shows were okay. Again, the only reason I watched them was to catch new game previews. They didn't inform me about the industry, and you know, that's a topic worth covering. But one day in 1999, I'm channel surfing, and I stumble upon the Space Channel. Normally a station for sci-fi and fantasy shows, this time they were offering something different. They were offering the Electric Playground.
If you want information about video games, you found the right show. I'm Victor Lucas.
That's right, and I'm Tommy Tallarico.
Oh god. You know it sucks? I have to preface such a good show by acknowledging an elephant in the room. Yes, one of the hosts was Tommy Tallarico, a video game composer I have defended in the past purely for love of his music and the fact that he was on this show. My patrons voted for this video 3 months ago, and in that time, another YouTuber named HBomberGuy dropped a scathing breakdown of Tommy's various lies and scams over the years. It's, very thorough.
I was the first American to ever be hired to work on the Sonic the Hedgehog series.
Huh? This video got 4 million views. If you search Tommy Tallarico in Twitter's search bar, well, let's just say you're not gonna find much love for the guy. And I absolutely get it. I can't defend the human being that he is. I can only say that in the 90s and 2000s, he was a charismatic guy, and I enjoyed watching him on this show. But he did not create the Electric Playground, and I think dismissing it through association is doing a major disservice. This is Victor Lucas's baby, and it was on for decades, long after Tommy left to start up his Video Games Live concert. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. But anywho, the Electric Playground was incredible. Finally, there was a show that was actually about the industry. In-person interviews with all the top developers, asking them what we can expect from gaming's future. Interviews with Gabe Newell, with Shigeru Miyamoto. This was the first time I ever saw Nolan Bushnell and Howard Scott Warshaw mention what a disaster E.T. was. I didn't know about the video game crash. I didn't know that they actually buried all of these games in the desert.
Why did they bury him in the desert?
I think that you always want to hide your sins.
Yes.
I remember always being excited whenever there was an E3 episode, because the place looked like Disneyland. All the decorations, all the booth babes, all the playable demos of hot new games. Magazine scans were one thing, but actually being able to see the games in motion was so freaking cool. Also, it's quite the time capsule because holy shit, what the hell was Cliff Bleszinski wearing in 1999? Through this show, I also learned that celebrities were just like you and me.
You play video games?
I did. I played Tekken for a while. I was really into Tekken.
Tekken?
Yeah.
Why Tekken?
It's the kind of fighting game where you don't actually have to do anything. You just push a lot of buttons and stuff happens, and I thought I was good.
Were you pretty good?
Yeah, but not really, no.
Now, did you bring your whole family here with you?
No, are you out of your mind?
My son is somewhere out here!
But the other thing I gotta gush about with this show was the absolutely nutso decision to make weird skits out of the interviews. I guess to make it more entertaining and stand out, they actually asked the developers to join in on wacky shenanigans. Like when Tommy interviews Will Wright about The Sims, in the background he and the devs were reenacting the game by capturing the manic over-the-top expressions that The Sims had. For Oni on PS2, Victor wanted to reenact The Matrix, I guess.
Excuse me, sir, it's a private party.
Where's Kevin?
He's over there. Oh.
The opening cinematics were done by the same team that did the anime classic Bubblegum Crisis. And all the in-game cutscenes use the game engine.
Amazing. Oh, and by the way, Jeff Keighley was a host on this show. Oh yeah, I've known about this guy for a long time, well before the Game Awards were ever a thing.
Keighley, we need you to infiltrate Ubisoft's headquarters and find out all you can about Splinter Cell chaos theory. Use any means necessary to acquire this intel.
Tell me everything about Splinter Cell 3 right now.
You will never find goofier footage of Jeff anywhere else. I swear someone needs to start an EP out of context Twitter account because that thing would be gold.
What about the audio for the game?
Music was done by John Williams with original sound effects from the film. Oh look, Yoda.
And the last thing I want to talk about was their final segment, Reviews on the Run. This segment eventually became its own show, which was referred to as Judgment Day in America. And all it was Vic and Tommy playing every game they could that week and giving their honest opinions. It's like, when I was watching Video and Arcade, I never had to worry about Nicholas Pickles talking trash about any of the games they covered. Being 11 years old, it was really refreshing to see completely honest discussions about these games.
The terrain was like tearing all the holes and the seams. It looked like a big quilt.
Yeah, you shouldn't be able to see where each texture map has been applied through the game.
No.
Why didn't they use the analog controller? The PlayStation analog controller is terrific. Why don't people use that?
Snowboarding game,
yeah, it would be awesome.
And you know, that's another thing I gotta mention. Victor Lucas is still doing his thing. Electric Playground is no longer on TV, but its official YouTube channel is still active after all these years. Whether you want to hear him talk about the Steam Deck or God of War Ragnarok, Victor is still passionate about gaming and deserves all the recognition for everything he's done. It is criminal, an absolute injustice, that the EP YouTube channel only has 67,000 subscribers. I am a country bumpkin from some podunk town in Ontario, and I should not have more followers than EP. So hey, I'd recommend giving his channel a look, especially if you want to see the glory days of EP's first 6 seasons. Electric Playground was definitely the best of them, but I kept finding other alternatives. My mom upgrades to satellite TV, and now we can see show titles as we go through the guide. I'm flipping through, and one show on Tech TV catches my eye. X-Play. Well, I know this isn't a sports channel, so I'm guessing it's about video games.
Today on X-Play, a couple negotiates the terms of their divorce in Virtua Fighter 4 Evolution.
Another banger for a nerd like me. With hosts Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb, X-Play was a game review show that leaned heavily into comedy. Their most famous review being of a terrible Xbox game called Aquaman: Battle for Atlantis. The gimmick being that Adam was so annoyed playing the game that he ended up buying a fish.
Meet Slippy. He's my new buddy that I took around my hometown. Slippy and me became fast friends. He loved the view. Which is more than I can say for the graphics in Aquaman.
Even going back today, it is a really well done show. You could tell that it was just a bunch of geeks throwing out whatever and seeing what sticks. It wasn't afraid to poke fun at the more embarrassing aspects.
How is the rash?
Well, once it cleared up, I was dating again.
Hey, I got you a PC game at the anime convention.
Oh, you didn't have to. Do you like horny bunnies?
It's porn! I'm gonna go open my stuff now. I like horny bunnies.
I mean, I enjoyed X-Play so much, I bought their Insider's Guide to Gaming. Look how thick this thing is. You have my permission to be jealous.
Little does Adam know that when the camera changes, all bets are off.
So I loved that show, but thanks to me watching it, I then became aware of G4. This was a gaming channel that merged with Tech TV in 2004, bringing with it all of its original programming. Much to the dismay of Tech TV fans, I'm sure. But since I wasn't a computer guy, for me, this was the greatest thing. I mean, you had Cheat, the show that was all about codes and walkthroughs. Here you could find out how to get the ultimate weapons in Final Fantasy, or how to overcome the brutal challenges of God of War. What about Filter? A show where we spent 30 minutes counting down the top 10 greatest Dreamcast games as decided by the fans. G4TV.com, an honest-to-God podcast show that took viewer calls and discussed the latest gaming news. But by far the best show was Icons. I mean, are you kidding me? Fantastic retrospectives on every gaming topic you could think of. The controversial games that created the ESRB, Gunpei Yokoi and his legacy with the Game Boy, Richard Garriott's life making Ultima. I mean, god damn! I watched this channel religiously in its prime, checking out the special E3 presentations as well as the G4ia Awards. What's that? Oh, nothing much. It was just responsible for making Stan Lee cosplay as a Metal Gear Solid character.
Revolver Ocelot has arrived.
I could do an entire video on G4, man. The highs and the lows. But I think I've said all I needed to say. The point of this video was how I got into gaming. And if it wasn't obvious by this point, I was fully on board. I was a bona fide gamer TM. Before I end this video though, I do have to address another important part as to why this all happened. Why I created my YouTube channel, why I still care after all these years. And really, it's the games themselves. In 1993, my mom took me to a store that was literally across the street from where I lived. We only had to walk 10 seconds to pick up candy or snacks. But the other thing this place had was rentals. I go in and I see this big shelf of Super Nintendo games. There must have been 15 or 20 of them. Stuff like Lagoon, Super Bowling, The Rocketeer, Kablooey, Krusty's Super Funhouse. Basically all of the games most of you have never heard of. Because I had a one-track mind, I immediately asked my mom if I can play any of the games on the shelf. So she goes, "Okay, pick one out, but you only get to play it for one day." And play I did! I would keep asking my mom once a month for $5 just so I could try another game on the shelf. One of those games was Final Fantasy IV, my first ever JRPG. It was an experience that was so different from everything I had played previously. It had emotional music, characters with depth to them, and storytelling that made me think about video games in a completely new way. Before that, I always thought of games as just games. The kind of things where you shoot for a high score or defeat the bad guy. Not morality tales about how a warrior hates himself for the atrocities he's committed. And the themes only got better from there with each passing sequel. Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VII, amazing games. And then I played a really cinematic experience referred to as Metal Gear Solid. Time and time again, I was shown that video games could be anything. Do anything. I couldn't kickflip on a skateboard to save my life, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater let me live vicariously in that culture. I always loved Spider-Man, and the second movie's tie-in game let me become him. It let me swing around New York City and jump off of buildings for thrills. In black and white, I could be God. And not a happy God either. I could choose to be an absolute devil deity who throws giant rocks at people's houses. I could be a rock star. I could be the WWE champion. I could run at the speed of sound. I could twirl people around with my mind. I could take down humongous giants. I could sneak into places without being seen. I could fight off zombies in a shopping mall. I could battle the most disgusting thing ever.
I am the great mighty Pooh, and I'm going to throw my shit at you.
Gonna seem weird to say after that clip, but video games are just so special. I mean, they take so much effort to make. They're both films, music albums, and fun toys, all wrapped in one package. The stories they tell are on the same level as other media. Silent Hill 2 is an incredibly poignant experience. Undertale uses the format so brilliantly that no movie or book could replicate it. I just think of the ways in which MMORPGs bring people together. How a game like Ring Fit Adventure can help you lose weight. How a game like Minecraft can spark a child's imagination. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand with my nephews. But they also like Mario too, because Mario never stopped being wonderful. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And if all you play is Nintendo, all the power to you. While I've always enjoyed the broad spectrum, gaming is still a very expensive hobby, and I don't begrudge anyone for sticking to one thing. I'm an enthusiast, but I don't want to be a snob about it. If all you play is Roblox and Fortnite, you're still a gamer. And if that last statement offends you, you might need to step back a bit. If I learned anything from being an obnoxious 10-year-old kid, it's that sometimes you need to stop obsessing over things. I love video games, but they are not the most important thing in my life. I don't care about review scores. I'm not going to demonize someone because they didn't like Sonic Adventure 2. And if you ever hear me calling for the death of games journalism while raging about wokeness, please shoot me in the goddamn head. Gaming always brings out the competitive side in people. They always want to be the smartest on something. They always want to be the best at something. And a lot of people feel like their personal worth is tied to how well they do at something like Bloodborne. And you can't think like that. You do have to separate yourself from that space because it's not healthy and you don't want to live your life like that. I have plenty of interests. I still read books. Did you know in high school that I was a big drama geek? Yeah, I participated in plays for 5 years straight, constantly performing in various drama festivals. In grade 10, I wore a lot of makeup in order to play a character named Sal. I might have been miscast. There are so many things in this video I left unsaid. I mean, I could go on and on about every single game I ever saw, I ever played, but I think we'd be here forever. And besides, that's what this YouTube channel's for. That's why you gotta stay tuned and watch the future videos so that I can discuss more things in greater detail. This video was just about me reminiscing about the old days, reminiscing about a time when video stores were very much still alive. God, I miss them so! Finding that inner child that's still deep down inside me, who still wants to have wonder about this industry, who still wants to be surprised by things, who still wants to give things a chance because he loves video games oh so much. Every one of you should tap into that kid. Just, you know, not the creepy weird parts that make him embarrassing. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how and why I got into gaming. Thanks for the support, everybody. This video was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. That's why it took so long to come out. Because it turns out when you want to talk about hundreds upon hundreds of games, you need to collect a ridiculous amount of footage. That was fun. Next video, I'm going to do something really simple, something really easy, so I can get it out in the middle of February. And as always, donate to the Patreon if this topic was not to your liking. If you didn't want to hear about this, well then maybe you should vote in the next poll so that you get to decide what comes out next. Anyway, folks, I am the Great Clement. Thank you again. Toodles.